Bates on the call. We'll do a live look in here.
This will be 46 yards away. He's been good from 42 and missed from 50. From 46 to tie our game, Turner. On the way. Yes, sir, for Turner. And we are tied at 27 on the second made field goal of the game from James.
I know college kicker situation there ties it up. Louisville way corner. Look,
you wanted to say it though.
So bad, but
that was so quick. I like Sam Hartman, the way he's playing quarterback right now. Fourth year there, he's seeing a lot of defense. He makes excellent decisions. He's a very experienced team coming back this year. I think he's sort of
Hello, everybody. Welcome into our Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore at the UGA Bookstore after Georgia gets a 37-0 win against the Arkansas Razorbacks a moment ago. Total domination for the Dogs. And yeah, UGA fans here at the UGA Bookstore, they are very, very happy with what they saw a moment ago. And I don't know what else you can say about this Georgia defense after all of this. Just as impressive as it gets here once again. Now pitching a shutout for the second consecutive week. And you know, it's one thing to do that against Vanderbilt, right? I mean, you know, maybe to a degree Georgia fans expect that. It's an entirely different situation to come out and do that today against the number 8 team in the country with your starting quarterback injured, not able to play. And this is an Arkansas team that had gotten a win last week against Texas A&M, breaking a 9-game losing streak. 9 years in a row they'd lost to the Aggies. They broke that streak last week. They beat Texas a little earlier this year. The better the Texas plays, the more often makes that win look even better. This was an Arkansas team that through 4 games had really been riding high, and they just, as the saying goes, ran into a total buzzsaw today when it comes to the Georgia defense. Incredibly impressive. A lot on the ground today from the Georgia Bulldogs. Probably more of the, as something that Kirby Smart talked about earlier this week, more of the efficient variety, maybe more so than necessarily the explosive variety. But nonetheless, Kendall Milton gets his first career touchdown. Zamir White got a couple rushing touchdowns. Also was able to scoop a block, punt, and get a touchdown there. And this was as thorough a beatdown as you're going to see from Georgia in a big game. And I find myself just, thrilled by the idea. Obviously, someone who cheers for UGA and wants the Dogs to go on a championship run this year. I thought what Georgia did today was potentially a real big step in that direction. It's kind of funny, leaving the stadium and you're kind of walking over here to the UGA bookstore getting ready for the show. It's amazing how different the mood in the stadium was as folks were kind of spilling out now back onto the bridge, getting ready to make their way home. It's amazing how different the mood was compared to where it was pregame. And we'll be showing you a lot of this video as we're rolling through the show tonight, what the stadium was like right before kickoff, what with game day for the last hour, kind of a second set up in the stadium today. Kirby Smart had challenged Georgia fans to be elite, and boy, let me tell you, they were. Whether you start with the dog walk at the beginning of the day with really thousands gathered there for that, in the stadium early, ready for kickoff here for this one here this afternoon. It was amazing the atmosphere that was created, conjured up today. Smart pushed fans in that direction. Georgia fans responded to that, and it was just so much fun to be a part of it. But as I was saying, it was also amazing as I'm leaving with just a couple of minutes left to go in the fourth quarter and making my way over here to the bookstore that all of that was kind of gone, right? It's like, Georgia fans were now kind of on to the next thing, thinking about the next game or their next weekend event or whatever else. And the thought that I had as I was kind of walking over was, man, it's not as easy as it looks to make a game like this feel easy. And the fact that Georgia can make the outcome of a game of this magnitude. College Game Day was here. ESPN sent Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit to broadcast the game, their top 2 broadcasters. This was treated as a gigantic game coming into it, but Georgia rendered it, essentially a foregone conclusion outcome by the way they played in the early stages here. So impressed I was with what you got today. And if you think about the hysteria, and I remember being, at Eagles Landing Christian Academy last night for high school football, and you're watching a lot of this unfold on social media about all the drama, and with good reason, right? Starting quarterbacks matter, but all the drama about the fact that, no, lo and behold, this JT Daniels thing is going to turn out to be a little more serious than maybe certainly I had initially thought it was going to be, and there's a chance he was going to miss that game. And, folks were saying what they were saying. The rumor mill was popping, and reports were flying and all of this. Like, that was such a huge story. And yet, for the most part today, during the game, you never really had much reason to think about JT Daniels, the fact that he wasn't here. Georgia's going to need him again, obviously, for its biggest and best games, for its national championship pursuit. You got to have your starting quarterback. But because of what Georgia did in all phases of the game today, special teams, obviously a ton on defense, pitching another shutout, getting the running game going in a way, and it had not really been going prior to this here today. Because of all of that, suddenly the discussion about who the starting quarterback was today and the health of JT Daniels, at least during the 4 hours this game was played, all of that ends up being a little bit of a moot point almost. All of that ends up being a little bit of an irrelevant discussion because of what Georgia was doing to throttle Arkansas. This, to me, was a major flex. It was a major statement for the program. I've said this before in our post-game shows when we've been here at the UGA bookstore, that if I had a vote, of course they don't give riffraff like me a vote, but if I had a vote, I'd make Georgia the number one team in the country. And we'll see what happens here at 3:30 Eastern time as it gets going just right now with Alabama and Ole Miss. Obviously, chance for an Alabama team to make a similar statement in a similar spot at home to what Georgia just made a moment ago. But that result notwithstanding, Georgia would have my vote as the number one team in the country if they gave ne'er-do-wells like me the chance to do that. So that's what I saw from the game. I'll obviously love a chance to hear from you on all of this, your chance to weigh in. We'll take your comments on both Facebook and on YouTube. We'll try to pull up some DawgNation.com stuff there as well. So your chance to do all of that here over the course of the next few minutes, your comments, and we'll enjoy the chance to weigh in with you and get going on that as a part of our Dawg Nation postgame show presented by the UGA bookstore. By the way, I'll show this to you. So I told you about this on Dawg Nation Daily on Friday. Still a few copies of this left. This is the great brand new book, Kirk Herbstreit. It's written with Gene Wojciechowski. And Kirk was here for a brief while yesterday on Friday at the UGA bookstore, signed a few copies of his book. There are still some of these left. So if you're leaving the stadium right now, come on by and get one of these Kirk Herbstreit autographed books while you still get a chance to do that. Of course, it's a staple for the UGA bookstore this time of year. It's that autograph signings going into the game. Great event with Coach Rick a couple Thursday nights ago. So stay close to Dawg Nation, obviously the UGA bookstore, online at UGAbookstore.com. You can find out about all the great autograph signings they've got going on. By the way, check me out today there as well. Another good-looking Nike shirt here, just like the one coaches might wear. This is the kind of apparel that you find right down there on the first floor of the UGA bookstore. So you got the Peter Millar over here, the Nike, the Southern Tide, all the big brands that are making good-looking UGA gear. They've got all of that right here at the UGA bookstore. So you can stop by and check that out and do some shopping, get decked out for the rest of this season and get that early starting your holiday shopping there as well. All of that for sure. All right, we'll go Facebook here first for a minute. We'll get a few comments. We will celebrate together a 37-0 win for the Dogs. A shutout pitched against a top 10 SEC foe today. What a day it was. David West references Zamir White saying Zeus was looking good today. And yeah, I really thought he was. I thought what Zamir White brought to the table was really pretty sensational. And so much fun to see him running, getting those hard yards. And, you know, I've been of the belief, I've said this a few times on Dawg Nation Daily, that if you could get to, you know, a point this season where the Georgia passing game, you know, earns that level of respect, suddenly things would get a little easier for the Georgia rushing attack. And I think you saw Arkansas do something. This is part of their typical game plan anyway. They drop a lot of guys in pass coverage, sometimes as much as 8 guys there. Some of that's just related to the personnel that they have. But also a lot of that has to be related to the fact that Georgia has now thrown the ball. You know, you can say it was lesser competition, UAB, than South Carolina, than Vanderbilt. But Georgia's proven an ability to throw that football. And all of a sudden now that does change the way that teams are going to defend you. All of a sudden now that does put you as a defense. And Barry Odom, as we talked about this week, one of the best when it comes to this kind of thing. You know, it puts that opposing defense in conflict with all of that. And so the Georgia running game, I was of the belief, was going to benefit from that eventually. And that's obviously some of what you saw today. Now maybe late stages of the game, Arkansas started keying on the run a little bit more, being forced to do that because that was clearly what Georgia was going to do today. But some of the success that Georgia had running the football today, I think you've got to attribute that to the fact that suddenly over the course of these last 3 games, Georgia's shown itself to be multidimensional. I love the phrase that Kirby Smart used this week, that Barry Odom as a defensive coordinator wants to find a way to make you play left-handed. Think about your offhand. Now, my left hand is my dominant hand, so I'm a little different on this. But think about the way in which if you were forced to play golf left-handed, for those of you who are right-handed, or you're forced to throw a ball left-handed, you'd look pretty awkward if that was not your dominant hand. And sometimes good defenses can make opposing offenses look awkward by making them do something that just doesn't quite feel as natural. Well, what Georgia, I think, has shown you now with what it did today against Arkansas, coupled with what it's done against lesser teams the last 3 weeks, is this is not going to be a one-handed football team. This is going to be a team that, when Daniels is healthy especially, and at times with Stetson Bennett too, and we'll have more on what his role is going to be going forward here in a little bit, but as you think about the rest of this season, the upcoming big games here in the month of October, I think you think about a Georgia team that can show you that multi-dimension now on offense, and I think the presence of that Georgia running game was kind of a step in that direction there. Stephen Swick says they're looking better and better, and I think that's true. I think that Georgia, think about where this team was, against a very good defense like Clemson, but week 1, you get the huge win there, but there were some things you'd point to and you say you want to see that improvement. And we said on our show that against lesser teams, with guys getting healthier, you were going to start seeing some of that improvement take place. Or at least there was going to be a very good chance that's the case. Well, when it comes to the health part of this, Georgia really hasn't gotten a lot of these guys back healthy yet. They're still waiting on that to happen, but clearly they are starting to kind of fire on all cylinders on both sides of the ball. Defensively, there's just no doubt about it. This is the best defense in the country, and it's, I think, quite possibly the best defense that Kirby Smart has had, maybe the best defense that Georgia has had by the time it's all said and done. So that side of the ball has been where it needs to be all season long. But now as you get into the crucial kind of crunch time stretch drive of the regular season, the Georgia offense is starting to come around there a little bit too. We'll talk more about the quarterback stuff here in a little bit there as well on the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA bookstore, because I think there's now something we have to kind of come to grips with when it comes to the situation involving JT Daniels here right now. Mark Godfrey says Nakobe Dean's definitely making a statement that he's better than Roquan 2.0. Yeah, I mean, I think that what the commenter's saying there is not that he's better than Roquan Smith necessarily, but he's better than just like the second coming of Roquan Smith, right? And I understand that. Like, I've been a sports fan my whole life, and sports fans kind of speak in the language of comparisons. We say, oh, this guy reminds me of this. Think about basketball, the next Michael Jordan, right? How many players over the course of your lifetime have you heard described as potentially the next Michael Jordan? There'll be some next Tom Brady stuffs. A lot of these Patriots quarterbacks that have kind of come into New England have gotten tabbed as, oh, this is going to be the next Tom Brady. Maybe Mac Jones is living with some of that right now. And a lot of these comparisons end up not being accurate. And I think our commenter who brings up that with Nakobe is bringing up a pretty good point, that what Nakobe is actually doing is kind of charting his own path. And is it going to result in being a top 10 pick and a Buckus Award winner? That's obviously a pretty hard thing to do. But has Nakobe Dean got more sacks today? Is Nakobe Dean well on his way to truly charting his own path here and making a statement of just how valuable a player he is on a Georgia defense, a front seven that I think is better than the one that Georgia had in 2017. Yeah, I think Nakobe Dean's kind of well on his way to doing that right now. I think you can say that certainly for sure. Matt Rukavina says you're either elite or you're not, harkening back to something that Kirby Smart has said. He says, well, this defense is special forces elite, and I believe that's probably true there as well. Susan Talton shouting out to say, go Dogs, and Susan, appreciate you being here for that. Somebody is asking about the over in the Alabama-Ole Miss game. Man, what is that, about 80 right now? I think expected total points of about 80 there in that one as the comments continue to kind of fly in here. On Facebook. We'll get some YouTube stuff here in a moment. Sherry Hudson-Byra says, remember, we have big players that are still injured. If they get back, we're going to be in the natty. Yeah, I mean, obviously some of these guys are working their way back right now, but it is kind of amazing just how much Georgia has been able to do. The area on the field where you needed that growth on offense, it's been amazing how much of that has taken place without really the return to health from a handful of wide receivers, to say nothing of guys like George Pickens who were injured during the spring. The list of elite names, Pickens, Washington, the 5-star variety, Dominic Blaylock, Kyrus Jackson, the high 4-star variety. It's amazing how either limited or absent players like that have been, and yet based on, what is it now, 30 or more points 4 consecutive games. You've got more than 50 in 2 of the last 4 games. If you think about what the per game average for Georgia is over the course of its last 4, some of y'all are better at math on the fly than I am. and just better at remembering what all these scores have been, all of a sudden these Georgia offensive numbers are starting to look a little bit better right now too. Jan Armistead says it starts to feel like a little bit of an Irk Russell style defense. I love the idea of that with Russell, and I'll take that comparison any day of the week all the way around here. So I think that's really good. Over here on YouTube, let's check in on some of your comments there. And I'm sure our buddy Michael Carvel, not only will he feed us some information from Kirby Smart's post-game press conference, it could be a little later, I will say. Now, I'm not following social media. Some of y'all may be seeing it right now. But there's a chance that Smart's press conference a little later today. There was such a gigantic contingent of recruits in the stadium today. It's early enough that, I'm sure Smart wants to spend some time with them. So that press conference may start a little later today than normal. Sometimes that happens on a big recruiting day. But I'm sure Michael will feed us some of those quotes from Kirby when he gives them. And also, I'm sure Michael will help us out with some of those comments there at dognation.com. For whatever reason, the dognation.com comments don't work quite as well on my phone. Brian Kephart says, how about 2 shutouts in a row for SC? Come here, you can take a picture. Come here. We'll do a picture right quick here. As a part of our Dog Nation post-game show presented by the UGA Bookstore.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the weekend. Good to see you guys. So fun stuff all the way around here. A lot of folks here at the UGA Bookstore having a good time and enjoying themselves, and really a pretty special day all the way around here as the Dogs get a big win and everybody's doing a good job. We'll do another picture here. Come on in here. A lot of folks stopping by to say hello and enjoy themselves as a part of the Dog Nation post-game show. So that's a good thing to be able to see. And I tell you, it's great. It's one of the cool things, actually, about the earlier start, even though a lot of folks were kind of disappointed about that when it was first announced. It's the fact that, it's still daytime, right? It's only 3:30 in the afternoon. You got folks milling about here. Everybody's in a good mood. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's happy. So if you're in Athens, come by and see us here at the UGA Bookstore. This is not quite like it is when it's like midnight, 1 a.m. when we're doing these shows here, when a lot of folks are kind of bleary-eyed and going home. No, you still got a lot of folks having a great time and stopping by to say hello right now. Jeremy Harbin brings up JT Daniels. So let's talk about that for a moment. We need to make sure that we do. He says, hope JT gets healthy, but I do believe we can win with Stetson. Well, listen, they've shown that now a couple of times in key spots, and whether it be leaning on Stetson Bennett, as Georgia did against UAB, or kind of doing so much dominant stuff around Stetson Bennett that Bennett was kind of rendered a non-factor because of how dominant Georgia was in every other phase of the game, Georgia's shown you they can do both those things. And listen, I don't want to be a wet blanket, far from it, on a day that's this good for Georgia, a day truly worth celebrating. But here's, I think, the conclusion you're forced to draw that, and I don't mind, taking my medicine when I probably get one wrong. And I think earlier this week I probably got this one wrong. I downplayed what Smart said on Wednesday regarding, Daniel's health status. And, I think it's easy to assume sometimes, I know why Smart's saying all of this. And yet I think the actual reasons for Smart, saying what he said, we may never know what his true motivation was for letting that leak out. But, you can start thinking about, okay, it's a big crowd. You don't want to take the air out of the balloon. Go ahead and let people know early this is a possibility so they're not too surprised when they get here, or whatever the reason ends up being, right? You can, kind of speculate on your own. But the point is, when Smart spoke Wednesday at the SEC coaches teleconference and said that JT Daniels was dealing with a lat injury and they were trying to figure out what was going on there, that turns out to be matter of fact and correctly stated, a factual statement by Kirby Smart, to the point where Daniels misses today's game. And so when you think about this for a moment, when you think about Daniels missing the UAB game, playing the South Carolina game, only playing a brief window for the Vanderbilt game, and then at least coming out for the one series during the South Carolina game, all of a sudden now you're looking at a guy that apparently has been dealing with this lingering issue. And I've told y'all before that I've had people who are smarter than me that understand the medical part of all this and how those injuries impact football. People smarter than me have told me that you can talk about treatment, you can talk about everything, but the thing that really aids you when you're dealing with what was originally an oblique injury and now is being described as kind of a lat injury, that when you're dealing with that, I guess your lat's more up here, but when you're dealing with that, the only thing that's going to aid you truly aid you is rest. And Daniels, has, I guess, been getting some rest when it comes to practice here as of late, but playing some in each of Georgia's last 2 games, and obviously playing through the entirety of the Clemson game, that it starts to sound like to me that what Daniels is dealing with is going to be with us as a storyline for quite some time. And as frustrating it is of well, he's healthy enough, or he's not healthy enough, or he's going to play but he's not 100%, or well, he's not going to play today but he could have played if Georgia was playing Alabama in the SEC championship, or whatever other kind of hypothetical scenario that'll get thrown out there. I just sort of get the impression that, unfortunately, this storyline is going to linger with us for a while. And I can tell you this, I'm through guessing. I'm through guessing if he is playing or if he isn't playing. And I don't fault anybody. I don't fault Daniels. I don't fault the coaching staff. I don't fault anybody. But this is apparently going to be with us now for a while, in the same way that the last 24 hours leading into this game were, pretty hysterical with the message board rumors and the reports and just the emotion connected to a starting quarterback who's, going to be in potentially the Heisman conversation if he were able to play healthy for a full year and potentially a first-round pick in next spring's NFL draft. Unfortunately, right now, the more prominent conversation is how healthy JT Daniels is. When he's played, he's been effective for Georgia this season, but his health status is apparently going to be a question, and so we'll keep our eye on that and continue to discuss that throughout the show. And one of the things you'll also see, and you've already seen some of this in the show, you'll see more of it, able to be down on the field today, and it was interesting to watch the body language unfold. You'll see some of this video of Daniels and Bennett together before the game. It was fairly obvious right there from the early going. Some of this time, Daniels did not have the helmet on. Bennett was clearly kind of, displaying the body language of a guy who was going to start at quarterback today. It was really pretty apparent. If there was any doubt going into the stadium, once you were in the stadium and you saw, Daniels and Bennett on the field, it was pretty apparent that Stetson Bennett was going to be starting there at quarterback for Georgia today, just on the basis of that body language being shown there. All right, let's get some more comments here for a moment. Faux Nickel says, where's the Arkansas fans at? Yeah, I guess there's some Arkansas fans who maybe have been talking a little bit of trash. They won't be doing much of that in the very near future. Our buddy AKA checking in with what a catch. Is that in the Alabama-Ole Miss game? Look at the Rebels coming down the field here. I tell you what, although Alabama gets in the defensive backfield that time, this is going to be a fun one to watch, and we got it going on. So I've got it on TV right here to my left, so y'all watch that with me. We'll do a second screen experience here as we talk some Georgia football and watch this Alabama-Ole Miss game as a part of the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA bookstore. Kevin Grammer, Kevin, let's talk about this for a moment. Kevin says, how about that noon crowd today? Arkansas was shell-shocked in that atmosphere. Sanford Stadium has turned into one of the college football's toughest venues. That's totally true. And I'll tell you this, I'm early 40s. Like, Sanford Stadium has not always been like this in my lifetime. You can go back to a time, our good friend Miriam Martin Corbin stops by to see us. All the celebrities are out here today. In my lifetime, Sanford Stadium has not always been like this. Like, I can think back to a time in which maybe sometimes students were a little bit late arriving, early leaving. If you want to go back years ago, fans themselves sometimes kind of got labeled kind of like that wine and cheese type crowd type thing where they sat on their hands and whatever else. If that's what Sanford Stadium used to be, and you can argue if it was or if it wasn't, but if that's what Sanford Stadium used to be years ago, I'm telling you right now, that is not what this place is anymore. This place is as loud as anywhere, and I go everywhere. This place is as loud as has been as loud as anywhere the last few years. And today, what they did on a noon start with what happened today with that crowd and the noise that was made, I tried to tweet out some video of this. The students were in the building early. It was so much fun to see, and you kind of knew it was going to be the case. There had just been too much said. There had been so much this week about, hey, you got to do it, you got to do it, you got to do it. I had said it kind of reminded me of the way that Kirby Smart made that very aggressive push for a full stadium for the 2016 G-Day, that when Smart, who doesn't really kind of come up with that big of an ask too much, but when you make that strong of a request, when you make that specific of a request, it was just fairly obvious he was going to get his wish. And Georgia responded in kind. And I said this on Friday. It is not easy to get Bear Alexander, Kamari Wilson, Shamar Stewart, blah, 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 Victor Burley from the class of 2023. I mean, I can't even think of all the names. There was, some online chatter about even Florida State commit Travis Hunter being here today. It is not easy to pull that off for a noon game, because I was in Eagles Landing last night for their game. I didn't get home till after 12:30, And, you talk about waking up trying to get over here, and I'm not whining. I'd never want to do anything but this. But the point is even I was tired this morning. I didn't get hit on last night. I mean, like in a football game. not the other kind of being hit on. The point here is that, a lot of these football players, you say IMG Academy didn't have a game last night, and it didn't. But still, a lot of these guys did play games last night, and they were here today. Georgia got them here, did a great job of organizing this as a recruiting event. And obviously the fans showed up in droves there as well, really showing some hospitality in some cases to a lot of these recruits, at least letting them know they were loved and desired here at Georgia. And the crowd was just amazing. It was impactful, too. Early fall starts from Arkansas, really, really erupting. I mean, it was just the kind of thing where you felt like you were somewhere special today, seeing Georgia do this. All the big game atmosphere. No doubt about that. There was nothing about this today that felt like a sleepy noon game. Georgia would have never had a chance today to sometimes, you kind of show up a little late or you're not quite focused off the word go. Not this team, not these fans, not this day. It just wasn't going to happen. It's our Dog Nation post-game show. We got more comments here. We're live at the UGA bookstore down the first floor. Everybody picking up some great apparel, including like the Nike shirt I'm wearing right now. I've gotten to wear over the course of the last few years, just my favorite kind of UGA apparel is the black stuff. I love the black shirts with a little bit of a red trim to it. You've also got kind of the black on black with the Power G logo here. That's the kind of stuff you can find at the UGA bookstore. And if you can't be here to get it for yourself, you can shop online, UGAbookstore.com. We have a great time being here after each and every game. I tell you, it's been fun over the course of the years to watch more and more folks stop by and say hello to us here. Certainly appreciate that. That's become a big part of what we do here, getting a chance to hang out, interact, and have a good time all the way around. That is just a really fun thing to be able to do. Stephen Nett gives me a shout-out for a good hair day. Listen, Stephen, that's a compliment I'll more than graciously accept. I appreciate that. So I appreciate that. I think what it is like, not to be vain here, but I've also lost a little bit of weight, so maybe the hair looks a little bit better because my face isn't quite as fat as it used to be. Tim Miller says, I caused him to go to the game. Best experience ever. Sports experience ever. Tim, that's great to see. I am so happy that you came out today. I think this was a fun game to come out to. For a lot of folks, it's, a chance to, you're trying to figure out which games can you go to, which games you want to be at. If you had a choice of coming today, this was not one to miss. This was not one to miss. This was a day that Dog Nation collectively, the entire group of people who make up this fan base and make up this program, the entirety of the Dog Nation universe, they came together today. It was something special. It was really, really good. OG Stoney Jackson says recruits are about to start flying in. I believe OG may be right on that one. Thomas Van Santa says the fans scored a touchdown. Yeah, don't ever tell me fans don't make a difference in a game like this. Don't ever tell me that. Because no doubt the job of an Arkansas Razorback was made more difficult today because of the atmosphere created. And, this is still kind of a new thing for us, right? I mean, you're going to go back to 2020, you didn't have these fans in the stands. I mean, like the worst noise in the world to me. I mean, like the noise that just I'm repulsed by more than anything else is that fake crowd noise, not just in Sanford Stadium. Everybody was doing it last year. That fake crowd noise where you could clearly tell when they turned up the volume and they were playing the noise, and you could tell when they turned it back down again after that. That fake crowd noise was just the worst. And there is no substitute for the real thing. Nothing like that at all. And that's what Georgia was able to show the world there today. And it's so nice to be able to see that. And so good to have all of you here with this at the Dog Nation post-game show presented by the UGA bookstore today. Don't forget, you got the autographed Kirk Herbstreit book. A few of these left over. Kirk made an appearance here at the UGA bookstore yesterday. A reminder, they always have big autograph signings going on each and every week, especially on game days. Georgia at Auburn next Saturday, but the following Saturday, good collection of autographed guests expected to be on hand once again, and so we'll look forward to telling you more about that. Tennille Calvino says Eagles Landing is my neck of the woods. That's nice. Yeah, boy, beautiful place, Tennille. Beautiful place. Tough night for Elka last night against Trinity Christian, but still a beautiful place and a wonderful school. Hugh Nash says 2 big wins today on the field and in the 2022 recruiting front, and I would agree on both. I would agree on both accounts there on that all the way around. Back over here on Facebook here for a moment. Let's see what folks are saying over here. David West says special teams look very good today too. Yeah, I mean, I think that you got to give him a ton of credit. I think that, first of all, when you get the block punt, it just sounds like that boom, that huge loud noise. Great to see the impactful play there, and just to see a Georgia team kind of getting after it here today. Let me read a few quotes here from both Sam Pittman and Kirby Smart. Sam Pittman saying that Georgia was a hell of a lot better than us today. So Pittman, as you might expect, very much concessionary in his post-game comments, and obviously he's got great respect for Georgia. These two coaches, Smart and Pittman, have genuine affection for each other, and now I think those of us that most of us would feel the way that, okay, we can go back to start rooting for Sam Pittman again today. It was actually kind of weird to be in a position where you couldn't root for Pittman, and at one point in time, I almost, tweeted something about him or something like that. It's like, nah, I can't do that. I like Pittman too much to take any kind of jab at him. So, but now it's kind of like back to the way it should be. And I think for a lot of us, as Arkansas heads back west, we'll root for them in almost every game they play the rest of the season, because Pittman truly is a good dude. He's a great personality. And I think he brings a lot of fun stuff to the SEC. I hope he keeps winning at Arkansas. I'm just glad he didn't win today. Let's get some Kirby Smart quotes here for a moment. So JT Daniels, according to Smart, is going to be, quote, week to week. And I said that before. And listen, that's not a ton of fun, right? That's going to lead to a very unpleasant conversation. That's going to lead to a situation where a lot of fans are left wondering, what do you think about this? What do you make of the scenario? That's going to be an unpleasant deal here, but it is the reality where at a certain point, Georgia's going to need Daniels. Didn't need him today, but at a certain point, Georgia's going to need Daniels. And is he there? Is he not? Can Georgia on the road at Auburn if it had to, or against Kentucky? Can Georgia keep winning without JT? Boy, I don't know about that. I mean, obviously, based on the way they played today, you'd say they could, but you want your starting quarterback in the game for a reason, and this is the kind of thing that's probably going to linger there for a little bit. But it's almost like, I don't want to speculate medical stuff too much, and I don't know if y'all will agree with me on this, but it's almost like, okay, if he's hurt, and if there's any thought that more rest would get him better, then as risky as it might seem, I might sit him out again next week too. At Auburn, that's a tough place, especially depending on what happens tonight between Auburn and LSU, about how into the game their fans are next Saturday. And I'm by no means saying that Auburn's a pushover when you go on the road there. I'm not saying that. I've got respect for the game, but I've also got respect for the idea that maybe just Daniels needs more rest, and maybe you get a healthier version of JT later if you give him more rest right now. I'm kind of just thinking out loud and obviously speculating, but nothing I'm saying should be taken as any kind of expert analysis on that. So Kirby also says, we think we're going to be able to get him back. We just don't know when. Kirby also says that it's a grade 1 lat injury, so do with that what you will. I like this from Kirby, more quotes saying, I give our crowd, our fans, at least 10 points today. How about that from Smart? Somebody a moment ago said the Georgia crowd scored a touchdown. Smart says they got 10 points today. It was an electric atmosphere. It's just really fun. We just don't get very many times to do this. If you're a Major League Baseball fan, you got 162 games with your team, 81 games in your home ballpark. If you're an NBA fan, you got 41 home games to go and enjoy your team. If you're an NFL fan, you got, I guess it's either 8 or 9 games at home to go and enjoy your favorite team. Here in the college football world, it's a shorter schedule. We only get, 6 of these home games per year, 12 regular season games. Only 12 chances or 6 home game chances to come out and really experience everything that college football has to offer. And the pageantry today was just so electric. I said this on our Kroger kickoff before the game began. There was a moment as I was walking towards the dog walk, I heard like 3 sounds kind of in unison. I heard the sounds of ESPN's College Game Day billowing out. I heard the Redcoat Band warming up and, getting ready to kind of do some of their scales and things like that to get ready for their day. I heard some rock music blaring from a tailgate. And all 3 of these things were like this perfect medley together of game day, tailgating, Redcoat Band. You're like, boy, these sounds combined together, man, it just doesn't get any better than that. So that was truly very, very good. More from Kirby Smart here as a part of our Dog Nation post-game show presented by the UGA Bookstore. The best teams I've ever been on took on the personality that they needed to take on. So Smart obviously happy with the personality that Georgia showed today. And then Stetson Bennett saying that Kirby Smart came up to him after Zamir White's last touchdown and said, I could have done that, which is kind of a funny line. Just talking about the holes that the Georgia offensive line opened up. We had one of our commenters a moment ago that said, hey, can we give the Georgia offensive line some credit for what it did? Looked like the interior of that offensive line in particular, I'm thinking about the guards, looked like they held up pretty well today against what was going to be a tough, not the biggest numbers in terms of the Arkansas front. A lot of times they only play, 3 men on that front, but obviously they're trying to get that push up the middle, and today Georgia just wasn't having it. So a much better day, much better performance from the Georgia offensive line all the way around. More of your comments coming here as a part of our Dog Nation post-game show. Texas Dog checking in to say, as a matter of fact, there's more time goes on, the more I understand why Kirby does what he does, and I'm just going to support him 100%. Yeah, I mean, clearly hard to second-guess anything that Smart's done over the course of these last few weeks. He's clearly had Georgia firing on all cylinders, and I don't dispute that whatsoever. Texas Dog also says the Alabama mountain looks climbable right now. Thomas Van Santa says the Georgia block punt earlier was amazing, and it was. Let's see what else. Christy asked about Kirby's kids sign. I didn't see that. What was that? Jeremy Harbin on the Kendall Milton touchdown. This video's on social media all over the place right now. So you bring in the B for Georgia. It was funny when Georgia first brought in Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis on offense, Sam Pittman recognized it, called timeout. And then, Carter, I didn't see Davis, but Carter at least was in on the next play. And he goes and talk about just moving a pile. As our commenter said there, Jalen Carter blocked 3 guys in the same play. And there's a great shot from the spider cam, the overhead cam, just watching Carter just road grade in front of Kendall Milton there, who got the easiest touchdown he's ever going to get because of what Jalen Carter did. It was a really cool thing to be able to see. Jermaine King says, let's get Jackson a scholarship after his block punt today. I like the idea of that. Green Soldier says that was a very impressive win, perhaps the most with everything against the Dogs this week. What a game, and the game plan to run the ball like we did is exciting to see. Yeah, and it's great to have that as a game plan. I agree with Green Soldier on this, and it's also great to be able to actually go out there and do that when you needed to. And some of that's just about the want-to part of it, and some of that I do think is really about the fact that if you're Arkansas, you did have to take Georgia's ability to throw the ball. You had to take that as a threat. Alabama scores a touchdown, by the way. You had to take that as a threat, just given the fact that Georgia had shown over the course of the last 3 weeks with 2 different quarterbacks against lesser competition, admittedly, but Georgia had shown an ability to be able to do that. And I think that certainly aided Georgia's chances to run the ball early, and the fact that you couldn't stack the box against Georgia today the way that you maybe have in the past. More comments coming in here. Herbert Franklin also saying that Irk Russell would love this defense. Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Georgia Boy 1988 says, checking in here to say, about the subject of resting JT Daniels. And the commenter, Georgia Boy, there is making a pretty good point. It's not like this is an easy decision because, as he points out, so you can, on the one hand, say, well, just give him more rest, and that'll get him healthier, and maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I'm not going to pretend to be a medical expert on that. But on the other hand, let's say the rest would benefit him, but you're still missing on that chance for him to get in sync with his offense. And, Daniels, and I've said this, go back and think about all the times I've said this over the course of the last few weeks. JT Daniels is still very, very, young into his Georgia career. It seems like he's been here forever because of the way the news cycle spins, but the truth is, he's very, very young in his Georgia career overall. Only started, a handful of games. This is still a guy that's, trying to improve, trying to get on the same page with this offense, and his numbers are good. He's playing effective, but this is still a guy trying to get in sync with the offense around him. So you want to get those reps. I mean, my wish for this team is when you play a Florida, not only is JT Daniels healthy, but JT Daniels has been playing for a couple of weeks prior to that to be in sync and rhythm for that game. That's even more true for a game like Alabama in the SEC championship, where if you want to look ahead to the likelihood of an Alabama SEC championship, where not only do you want a healthy JT Daniels for a game like that, but you also want Daniels to be in rhythm when that game takes place. So our commenter, Georgia Boy 1988 brings a pretty good point that, yes, on the one hand, it might be good to give him rest, but if he's healthy enough to play, you're also benefiting there from the chance to get him fully in rhythm with his offense and allow those Georgia receivers to get in rhythm with him. And I think that's a significant point to bring up. The DGD podcast checking in to say that the Auburn game is going to be fun. I think it is. I think Jordan-Hare Stadium is a pretty big venue. And, the win that Georgia got there in 2019, I thought was a pretty big deal. When you're talking about, they won the SEC East that day. That was the HBTFD moment from Kirby Smart. You had a lot of good stuff and a lot of fun, fun things from Georgia after that 2019 game against Auburn. So first chance to be back at Jordan-Hare Stadium since all of that. First time to do this as a part of the new October schedule for these two teams. So, yeah, I'd say all of that's going to be a pretty big deal. Number one checks in on YouTube to say if the offensive line keeps getting better, everyone better watch out. And I think that's true. And, look, we said this. It is possible to improve. It's possible to get better. It's possible to, especially for the offensive line. There are certain things in football that are just chemistry positions that, you don't judge, at least in my mind, 5 offensive linemen individually. I think in a lot of ways you judge how the group performs collectively. You measure the 5 guys playing together. It is a little bit like a dance these guys are doing with each other. And the more that chemistry is developed, the more you start to trust your brothers on either side of you, I think the better the job gets. And they're still experimenting. Broderick Jones came in today. Jamari Salyer slid over to right guard for a while. Warren Erickson slid out when that went down. So they're still trying to figure some things out. But as number one pointed out on YouTube, as they are figuring it out, the results are starting to improve. A lot of reason for optimism when you think about that. Hugh Nash saying now we need to stay focused and ignore the press clippings. Take care of business each week and we'll be paid off by the end of the year. The national championship is more than realistic. This team is special. Hugh's right about that, and I'll be happy to say this to a Georgia player who might tune in to see what people are saying about him. Like, I'm obviously going to be throwing rat poison around all left and right here because that's genuinely what I think is appropriate after a game like this. But you shouldn't listen to a word of what I say. To that Georgia player who tunes in, those Georgia coaches, Georgia staffers who tune in, y'all keep the focus where it is. Y'all, if you want me to say something bad about you to keep you fired up, I'll do that if I need to. But don't listen to all this good stuff I'm saying about you today. Y'all keep doing what you need to do and get ready for Auburn this upcoming Saturday. Ignore those press clippings for sure, because on a day like this, there is justifiable praise to be thrown around, and it's just simply a matter of, is this something that you how much you're going to pay attention to that. If you're a player, hopefully not very much, but it is the thing to say and talk about here right now, because it was a great day for Georgia. Frank Patterson said, did Big O and Tyke play? No, I never saw either one, but I also, I could have missed that maybe too. But Frank, no, I don't think that that Darnell or Tyke got it, at least that I saw. But let me also not say that too emphatically, because there's a chance I could have missed that, but I didn't obviously see them in there. Frank Patterson also happy about the mailman there today too. Let's see what else. Somebody mentioned on YouTube that Stetson Bennett had a statement that he had been the starter all week. Yeah, I had a chance to talk to some folks for the last 24 hours. They had, been acquainted with what was going on at Georgia practice. And they told me that, yeah, unfortunately, Daniels did miss more time than maybe was initially kind of led on earlier in the week. That Daniels truly was missing some time. And I think, and I'm just going to think out loud here for a moment, that I think one of the challenges for Kirby Smart, too, is when you're talking about a pain management thing, which is, I believe, what Daniels is likely dealing with here, how comfortably can you throw the ball? He's right-handed, so I'll do that. How comfortably can you throw the ball with the pain that you're experiencing? And some days are better than others, but what happens if the practice on a Tuesday, for instance, early in the week when you're probably working as hard as you're going to work at any point in time that week, what happens if you miss that practice on Tuesday? That's a tough decision for Kirby of, well, how ready is my player to play on Saturday if he's not able to practice on Tuesday? It's one thing if he's not, feeling great on Thursday, lighter days later in the week. It's another thing on those, you remember the old days, I think it's still kind of a phrase, the idea of a bloody Tuesday, the toughest, hardest practices of the week, early in the week commonly on a Tuesday. what happens if a quarterback misses a day like that? Is that guy really ready to play on Saturday? You know, in the NFL, star players miss practice all the time. I mean, when Julio Jones was with the Atlanta Falcons, did Julio ever practice? Almost seems like he almost never did. That pretty frequently you've got star players missing practice at the NFL level. I don't know how appropriate that is at the college level. Even for a guy like Daniels, who's a student of the game and a cognitively very sharp young man, if he's kind of up and down in terms of his pain management on this lat issue right now, if he's missing practice but then ready for the game, does that put Kirby Smart in a conflict of, well, how ready is my quarterback if he wasn't a part of the reps that were gotten during practice this week? And once again, I'm just kind of speculating out loud and kind of thinking out loud, but that is kind of what kind of goes through your mind there. But to go back to the comment, or what apparently Stetson Bennett had said something to the effect of, I did have people tell me over the course of the last 24 hours that, he had missed some time. He had missed that. Let's see what else. Jermaine King checking in. Good stuff there from Jermaine King. Ryan M. checks in to say, why the praise for Stetson? He was the least impactful player today. Yeah, I don't know that anybody's necessarily praising Stetson necessarily. I think what's been praised here is the fact that Georgia came out and won a game against a top 10 foe 37-0 without its starting quarterback. That's really pretty amazing. That's really pretty remarkable. Let's get some more Facebook comments here. Steve Shaffini says, I think it's safe to say Nick Saban will not hug Lane Kiffin like Kirby Smart hugged Sam Pittman. You may be right about that, Steve, although there was a weird thing at ESPN this week where Nick Saban was quoted pretty heavily in a story about Lane Kiffin, and I was actually telling somebody this during the game today that there's no way that Kirby Smart would have allowed himself to be kind of a source for a story about somebody else, a story that really made Lane Kiffin look cool. Like Nick Saban was a willing participant in that story. I mean, Kirby's much younger and to this point less accomplished than Nick Saban is, but there's no way Kirby would have done that for Sam Pittman or anybody, and he loves Sam Pittman with good reason. But so you may be right, they may not share a long hug together after the game, but man, Nick Saban sure was complimentary of him for an ESPN story, which I thought was a little unlike the GOAT. Let's see what else. Adrian Hill checking in, saying the Georgia defense right now can't be picked apart. I mean, listen, I'm as impressed as I've ever been with any unit with what I see from this Georgia defense right now. I really am. Philip Jordan Wells also checking in there too. Randy Hall mentioned that Bennett had a great touch pass to Kenny McIntosh. Yeah, in the rare moments when Bennett did throw, I thought he made a couple of nice throws. Could have had a pick, and that's always kind of going to be the thing you live with Stetson, is that Bennett is willing to throw the ball into tight windows, and sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's not quite so good. But today, I think you shouldn't lose sight of the fact that quarterback was just a total non-factor for Georgia all the way around. And I'm sure that Kirby Smart and others may talk about some of the running plays that maybe Bennett checked him into or something like that. But, just watching the game from the stands or on TV, you can't always tell that, very easily. But I'm just amazed that there are not many teams in the country who could do this. I can promise you this. If Alabama does not have Bryce Young, they're not beating Ole Miss 37-0. They're just not. I don't know. They're not beating Arkansas 37-0. There are not a lot of teams who are structured in such a way that could have absorbed their starting, or could have lost their starting quarterback to injury and absorbed that as well as Georgia did today. That is a remarkable occurrence. And it's not to say that you don't need JT Daniels back. You clearly do. To win your best games, to win your biggest games, you got to have Daniels healthy, and that's going to be a huge story now for the next foreseeable future until it kind of evolves. But to think that Georgia today rendered the absence of its starting quarterback a moot point, man, there are not a lot of teams that could have done that. Not to the degree that Georgia did there today. Let's see what else. Good stuff rolling in here on Facebook. Shane Taylor says, great to see Georgia establish the run, dominate on the ground. That's something that Georgia fans had wanted to see, and they got a real chance to do that today, and that was a nice thing to see. Hayes Callaway gives you, how about them Dogs, 37-0 win. You love that. I mean, think about where this program is year over year, right? I mean, it's like last year in Fayetteville. I mean, the score ends up being somewhat similar, right? I mean, Georgia scored 37 last year against Arkansas, but it felt totally different, right? 37-10 win that ends up being kind of a comeback. And, in a lot of ways in the first half, you were left feeling really, really concerned about where things were. And here we are a year later. Now Georgia's dominant. Arkansas, this game could have been 6 hours long, and Arkansas was not going to score in this one today, in this spot. It just was not going to happen. This is what Georgia was able to do today. Big-time program growth year over year. I'd also made the comparison to the Notre Dame game in 2019. Another game against a similar kind of ranked team, very loud crowd, and everything was perfect for Georgia in September of 2019 except for the result. I mean, Georgia won the game, but Georgia didn't play great in that game. I think even the players themselves would say they kind of left something in the field that day. It ended up being a precursor for what a lot of the rest of that season was going to look like. Once again, now think about kind of, 2 years later, once again, tremendous program growth from Georgia. A commenter a moment ago saying that a national championship for UGA is very realistic. I absolutely agree with that. And I am growing more and more convinced, even through injuries and even through some moments of imperfect play, I'm growing more and more convinced that this Georgia team is an improved version of what it was in 2018, 2019, and 2020. Those three teams were all contenders as well. The three teams since Georgia last made the college football playoff. Those three teams in 18, 19, and 20 were all, contenders as well. But I don't think they were as fully rounded out, as fully formed as this Georgia team is. I don't think they were as built to withstand the adversity that this Georgia team's already been asked to withstand. I don't think you could have gotten that as much in 18, 19, or 20, but you're getting it right now. And my only hope is the fans, and it certainly seems like based on the comments we're getting today, but my only hope is that fans are really enjoying what they're getting a chance to see because it's been fun. It's been fun through 5 games, and the toughest games are still to come. I don't doubt that. I don't deny that, but it's been fun for right now. Matt Rugavina brings a pretty good point. You make a case that Arkansas may have been the most physical team left on Georgia's schedule. I think that's probably true. I'm kind of curious to see what kind of physicality Florida shows tonight at Kentucky. Obviously, they ran the ball well against Alabama, and, Mark Stoops, one of the things his teams are typically known for is that physicality. We really haven't thought of Florida as being a particularly physical team these last couple of years. I am curious to see how physical they look against Kentucky tonight, but I think Matt makes a pretty good point there. Jacob O'Neill says, got to get ready for the races. He's checking out. Jacob, thanks for being here. Cecilia Gagnon says, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Cecilia, that credit goes to those guys that elected to stay another year. Yeah, I mean, how happy are you to have Zamir White, James Cook right now, showing what they're all about, coming back for that senior season. Other guys you mentioned, Jordan Davis could have been a first-round pick in last spring's NFL draft had he left, and yet he comes back, and I think Georgia's really benefiting because of that. I think you're absolutely right about that. So Darius Brown says Darnell Washington was in the game a little bit today, so let's make sure we correct that. Randy Hall wonders how many commits we get this weekend. So you wonder if anything from a commitment standpoint will come out of the weekend, but certainly you get the impression that some groundwork was laid for some potential commits. Georgia hosted an incredible collection of visitors here today. Let's get some more comments here. Scotty Barnes says, this season's Dogs are big team, little me, and I like that. Morris Rich, thank you for the kind words, and I enjoy these comments after a game like this too. I really do there as well. By the way, Hugh Nash doing double duty in both comment sections, saying I'm really proud of our offensive line today. Imposed their will. They're getting gelling at the right time. Yeah, I think that's true. Also, shout out to Hugh Nash for the very difficult spelling of gelling. I'm not quite so sure how to. Gelling's one of those tricky words for me, so good job on spelling that one correctly. Aaron Griswold says, if we had a fully healthy team, we would be unbelievable, but thankful for what we have. Yeah, I mean, it's been great with what Georgia already has, and I think Aaron's right. You have plenty of reason to think it's going to get even better as this team gets healthier. And Wayne Kirkland says you still want to get those players back, and you do. Nice to see some of guys like Darnell here today, and hopefully see a lot more of them there in the future. As don't discount what Washington is. Not only as a pass catching threat, but in that running game there as well. Brock Bowers was credited today. I saw where I think it was either Randy McMichael. I think it's Randy McMichael on Twitter talking about how well, of course, Randy McMichael, a great former tight end at UGA, talking about how well Brock Bowers was blocking today. We kind of wondered, would Bowers be taken away in a pass game situation today? And, from a statistical standpoint, for the most part, that kind of happened. But from a blocking standpoint, it sounds like Bowers was a big key in kind of getting that running game going. And running now out of those 2 tight end sets that include both Bowers and Washington, both threats to catch it, both accomplished blockers there as well. That's a big benefit to the Georgia running game there, too. A lot of folks watching this Alabama-Ole Miss game, it looked like maybe they had Young back in the backfield there for a moment, then he kind of scampers free. That's a guy who's obviously very dangerous with his legs, but, Alabama does not have the same level of quarterback depth in its program right now that Georgia does. And how you handle Young because of that, I think it's a little bit of a tricky thing for Bill O'Brien, the first-year offensive coordinator there. Christie says Ole Miss needs to learn how to tackle. Boy, that seems like that's been true for a while. Reformation Logistics also checking in on what's happening there on CBS. Tristan West, impressed with what he's seeing from Bryce Young right now. Bear Rhino 7762 says, what a game by Zeus. That touchdown run was nasty. Yeah, it really was. Really very impressive. Very impressive. Xavier Mitchell says Nakobe Dean's the real difference maker on defense. He's elite. I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that. Michael Porter says he loves the shirt. Thank you, Michael. So this is from the UGA bookstore. We're here at the UGA bookstore, the shirt from the UGA bookstore. It's one of the Nike shirts. It's kind of like the black on black, the G, a little bit of a red trim there around the shirt. I've gotten to where I just love the black UGA gear, and this is a really cool shirt from Nike. So make sure you check it out if you can come by to the UGA bookstore. Of course, find them online at UGAbookstore.com. You can get more on that. Peter Millar, Vineyard Vines, Tommy Bahama, Southern Tide. Of course, more autographed copies of the Kirk Herbstreit book as well. He was here on Friday, signed some of these. If you're looking for a great gift as we head towards the holiday season, the Herbstreit book goes great with that. More comments continue to roll in. Jeremy Harbin says, how many sacks do we have? In total, I haven't seen the full stats on that yet. That's a really good question. Jay Shipes says, I'm jinxing Ole Miss. Yeah, boy, Jay Shipes is he's been all over these Ole Miss Rebels. You better be very careful right here. Barry J says, Kendall Milton flashed with a spin move. Yeah, I thought all 4 of Georgia's running backs looked very impressive today. In fact, with Kendall Milton, let's go ahead and make Kendall our Marco's Pizza moment of the game today. Kendall got his first career touchdown as a Georgia Bulldog, and so that seems like a very appropriate thing to celebrate and shout out. Congratulations to Kendall on that. The truth is, we should have done this a couple of weeks ago when A.D. Mitchell got his first career touchdown. We try to do that for a lot of our Marco's Pizza moments of the game, especially when the games themselves aren't particularly close. But we forgot to do that for A.D. the other day, so we'll give Kendall what A.D. should have gotten. Status as the Marco's Pizza moment of the game for a big, big performance today and a first career touchdown. And, of course, Jalen Carter, who was just slinging bodies on that lead block on that touchdown. That's a cool thing to be able to see, too. So as you're watching, whether it be Alabama, Ole Miss right now, the football rolling into the evening, and everything else, make sure you enjoy it with some great pizza. Make sure you enjoy it with Marco's Pizza, because not only is it the golden brown crust, perfectly baked with the cheeses melted on top and the old roll toppings, authentic flavor that comes from a Marco's Pizza, it's also a great price as well. You can get a large one-topping pizza right now for just $9.99. So check it out online, marcos.com, or the Marcos app. Marco's Pizza, pizza lovers get it. And, of course, participation varies, so find out more in the store there where you're located. But marcos.com, Marco's app, you can find more about that. All right, what do you say we kind of bounce through here? Let's do a few more comments, and then we'll get ready to roll out the door after that. And hope all of you are doing great today. Frank Patterson says, so I haven't seen the Kamari Wilson Instagram post. Is it black on black? Is that what it is? I'd like to see it. It kind of reminds me of remember when Deion Bowie the other day tweeted out the red on red and kind of got everybody stirred up there. So I'll have to take a look at that. I'll have to take a look at that for sure. Christy says, y'all are tripping if you think Bama looks like Bama. We'll have to see, Christy. I haven't been able to watch the game too closely as of yet. It sounds like you don't think that. What do y'all think about what Christy's saying there? Jermaine King says Travis Hunter was at the game today. Yeah, that is interesting, and I don't quite know what to make about that, but let me tell you something. I'm glad to see him at Athens on a day like today, and also, and this is on a serious subject, prayers sincerely for Travis. You know, he was injured last night in his team's, win against Peachtree Ridge, Collins Hill, number 1 team in the state for Class 7A, and Hunter was injured there. I think the injury prognosis on this is still being determined. It sounds like the early stuff that I had heard, and a lot of what I heard was third hand, so I'm not going to get in too much on that, but a lot of what I heard was more hopeful than not, that maybe the scenario was better than it could have been. So, I mean, for those of you that watched our game with Collins Hill and Rome a couple of weeks ago, you saw one of the best players in this state in 15, 20 years maybe. Just an incredible, incredible prospect on both sides of the ball, a lockdown cornerback, an incredible wide receiver, dazzling wide receiver, as good a collection of highlights as you're ever going to get. And he was injured last night, so you're hopeful for the best on him. And it sounds like the early returns on that might be pretty good news. So not only was it good to see him in Athens today, and certainly curious about what that might lead to, if anything, but also big-time prayers out to Travis Hunter that his injury recovery goes well. And on some football field somewhere for some team, he's back playing the sport that he loves again very soon as well. All right, a couple more comments here. Frank Patterson says Cincinnati's killing Notre Dame right now. Is that true? That's pretty interesting. I saw before the game, a lot of those Bearcats fans, much the same way that, not to the degree that Georgia did it, but, Bearcats fans use this as a chance to make that big trip over to South Bend, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Their team was also favored in Notre Dame Stadium today, which is kind of a cool thing there, too. So, Cincinnati, this could be a very big day for that program. And if you think about, an undefeated run for the Bearcats, if you win at Notre Dame to go along with what's already a win at Indiana, that's not the typical Group of 5 schedule. When UCF in a hollow fashion proclaimed themselves national champions, they didn't have much of a win to point to as why that should be the case. That's just, just something they decided to do on the basis of a, pretty soft schedule. If you're Cincinnati and you go undefeated in the AAC, but you've also got out-of-conference games and wins against at Notre Dame and at Indiana, I don't know. That's a little bit different case for the college football playoff than we've typically seen from a Group of 5 team. I think the committee would still leave Cincinnati out. I do, unless there was just some sort of obvious, there wasn't unless there just wasn't an easy way to do it. But if that score were to hold up and if Cincinnati were to beat Notre Dame, that'd be a pretty big deal. A few more. Piece of one saying that all that Ole Miss hype dying in the afternoon light. Maybe that is the case. Barry J, though, says he doesn't think the Alabama defense is quite as good. Yeah, I mean, against quarterbacks like Matt Corral, though, even the best Alabama defenses, we've seen them have some issues. Thomas Demone says since 17-0 right now for Cincinnati over Notre Dame. Is that the score? Wow, that's pretty impressive. And by the way, you got to be making up scores on me. Don't do that. I'll figure it out if you're lying. I don't think that was a lie, but y'all don't be dropping phony scores in here on me. Bill Kelly going to check out and watch some more football. Yeah, Bill, we're about to get off the air here too ourselves. Matt Rukavina also reminding us that Randy McMichael, our good friend from 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, former Georgia tight end, was one of the unsung heroes of the hobnail boot game. Big catch from McMichael set up the Veron Haynes score. I think that's a good thing to be reminded of. Very, very good. Alan McGovern also echoing what Christie said on YouTube a moment ago, that Bama's defense is not the dominant force of the past. Offensive line suspect also. Dawgs can take them this year. Let's see what else. Pretty good comments continuing to roll through. Darius Brown said he's glad to see ESPN give us a lot of love, and it was a big day for Georgia and ESPN. That's a pretty big commercial for the program when you get a chance to do that. Morris Rich says, my son came down from New Jersey with his friend for the game. Couldn't have been better. Boy, what a great trip that was. Randy Hall, thank you for the kind words. He says, what a show, what a game. And, yeah, boy, Georgia put on a great show today, and hopefully you're having a good time on our post-game show here from the UGA bookstore as well. Kevin Cook says, I can't praise Jalen Carter enough. They should play him every down. I like Kevin on that because that seems about right for me there as well. Raymond Fossaway checking in to give some of his fellow commenters a hard time. Shane Taylor says, do you think Georgia has a good chance in the number 1 recruiting class? Some people are better at crunching the numbers than I am, but here's what I will tell you. Georgia has a much better chance with a lot of elite recruits, guys like Christian Miller and Mikhail Williams and maybe even Barry Alexander. There were a lot of recruits that I kind of closed the door on for various reasons, and that door seems wide open right now, wide open. At one point in time, I thought Luther Burden was a pipe dream. I don't think that anymore. At one point in time, I thought Andre Green Jr. might be a pipe dream. Now I'm not quite so sure that's the case either. There are a lot of guys where I was left to question just how deep are Georgia's ties with these players, and I find myself thinking, hey, yeah, maybe pretty deep all the way around. Maybe pretty deep all the way around. Pretty good comments. Try to get 1 or 2 more good ones, and then we're going to get off the air after that. Hope all of you had a great day and a great time and enjoying a fun weekend in Athens. Good day for the Dawgs, 37-0. So let's recap for a minute here some of the things we've also talked about as well. So it certainly sounds like, and Kirby Smart for the most part confirmed this for us, that the JT Daniels injury, the lat that kept him out of the game today, on the aftermath of the oblique injury that kept him out of the UAB game, that this is going to be a lingering storyline. And a day like today, Georgia ought to be commended and celebrated for the fact that it really made Daniels' absence a non-factor. But obviously there are going to be games this year where Georgia needs its starting quarterback, and right now you can't be quite so sure when he's going to be healthy again and, you know, what a prolonged absence, if any absence at all from this point forward, what that's going to do to the cohesion or cohesiveness, whichever the right word is on that. The gelling, one of our commenters used that word, the Georgia offense's ability to gel, what an absence for Daniels would mean for all that. But it's going to be a storyline that we're going to have to follow. And that's going to be a big deal. But today I thought was one of the biggest flexes from Georgia in recent memory. In fact, that's probably worth bringing up here for a second. When was the last time against a good team? And listen, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from, like, Georgia rival. I don't want to hear it from anybody that, well, you know, Arkansas is not really a top 10 team. This team beat Texas A&M last Saturday. Albeit with that starting quarterback. This team beat Texas earlier this year. I don't care where they're ranked. Arkansas has proven themselves over 4 games to be a quality team. And Georgia punched them in the face today. So Georgia proved something today. And I think you have to go back a good while to find a moment in which Georgia was emphatic as they were today. Like, when was it? Is it Kentucky 2018? That was a top 15 team that Georgia beat 37-10 on the road. I mean, you know, how many games in the recent Smart era against high-quality competition have been as dominant as this game was today? I think that's a great question. By the way, really nice comments. Thank you all very much. Gregory and Tanisha Davis says, I think that UGA is just that good. They very well might be. George Herndon also says adapt and overcome. In a lot of ways, that's exactly what George is doing. Jeremy Harbin says Arkansas is a great team. We just made them look bad with our defense, and our offense scored enough to blow them out. Yep, that's about as simple as that to me, for sure. Reformation Logistics also thinking about the flex that Georgia had when it went and won at Notre Dame back in 2017, which is obviously a very fond memory for many UGA fans. What else before we go? Texas Dog says Arkansas won't do anything but get better under Sam Pittman. Yeah, I mean, I think that Arkansas is still going to be a very tough out in SEC West play. I can promise you this. See, you've heard it said before that styles make fights, and I think that Arkansas, what it does well, makes it very, very tough on a lot of teams. There's a lot of finesse football in the SEC West right now, and Arkansas is kind of the opposite of that, you know, tough and physical on its lines of scrimmage. And that's going to work pretty well against some of the teams that Arkansas is going to play. But against Georgia, you're just not going to out-tough them. Even if you want to say, well, the Georgia offensive line was kind of, you know, unfinished product coming into today, that's fine. It's still hard to be as physical as Georgia is going to be, especially when it comes to trying to block that defensive line. That is just a really hard thing to be able to do. And so you're just not going to be able to do that. So this has been a good show, a fun time. Thanks so much for your thoughts on what was a really, really great day to be in Athens. 37-0. Georgia gets the win against Arkansas. And now he's set up for a very busy week of getting ready to go to Auburn, of looking at the health of JT Daniels, of figuring out what Georgia did today. They can also travel onto the Plains next Saturday, watching the rest of these SEC games. Does Alabama continue the trek that it's on right now against Ole Miss? Remember, they got off to a fast start against Florida a couple of weeks ago and fizzled. They are at home today and against a different team, so maybe we'll see a different storyline and outcome there. We'll watch Florida tonight to see Georgia's 2 opponents late in the month of October. Which of those looks the best between the Wildcats and the Gators? So, a busy night of football, a busy week getting ready for Auburn, and a chance that come Sunday, who knows? Depending on how this game shakes out here in Tuscaloosa, maybe Georgia's the number 1 team in the country. If they're not ranked that way, they may be the people's choice to be number 1, at least in the eyes of Dog Nation. So thanks for being here for our Dog Nation post-game show. Big thanks. The UGA Bookstore is always such a gracious host to us, and they're taking good care of folks even right now. Store's still open. Folks doing their shopping. The Peter Millar stuff, I can see it from here. It looks great. The Nike stuff, 47 brand. Tommy Bahama, Vineyard Vines, Southern Tide, all kinds of great-looking apparel. Get stocked up. You want to look good. A special season like this, Georgia may be in the midst of it. You want to be dressed well yourself, so make sure you get that here from the UGA Bookstore, online, ugabookstore.com. We'll see you next time on our program. The next time we speak here for this show, it'll be on the field there at Jordan-Hare Stadium next Saturday. I'll also see you Monday morning for Dog Nation Daily. We'll look forward to doing that with you then, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.